Hi guys, welcome back to The Dog That Saved Me. Today we're going to be debunking 5 PTSD myths. There are a lot of myths associated with PTSD, and today I'm just going to talk about the top 5 that I've found, and we're going to discuss why they're a myth, and we're going to discuss the truth behind it. So the very first one is that PTSD is a mental illness. Now I say that it's not, because PTSD is actually a brain injury. The trauma you've experienced has actually injured your brain. Your brain's not sick, it's injured. And that's why when people say it's a mental illness, I disagree with them and say it's actually a brain injury. PTSD also shares several symptoms as a concussion. Some of the shared symptoms that PTSD has with a concussion are cognitive dysfunction, disorientation, altered taste and smell, sleep disturbance, sensory impairment, slowed mental processing, primitive motor responses, depression, anxiety, fatigue, and visceral problems. And so that's the first myth, that people believe that PTSD is a mental illness, when really it's a brain injury. Your brain's been hurt, it's damaged, it's not sick, it's injured. The second myth about PTSD is that only soldiers get PTSD. And that simply just isn't true. It's estimated between 10 and 30% of combat soldiers actually end up with PTSD. Whereas 50% of women who have been sexually assaulted end up with PTSD for the rest of their lives. Not only that, but 1 in 3 women will be sexually assaulted in their lifetime. And this is part of the reason why women are twice as likely to get PTSD as men are. Some of the more common ways people get PTSD are combat, physical assault, childhood abuse, and car crashes. There are a plethora of other ways people can get PTSD, not just being in combat. And so that's myth number 2. Myth number 3 is people with PTSD are dangerous. Again, this is not true. In fact, the vast majority of people who have PTSD are non-violent and not dangerous in any way. And of the few that are violent and dangerous, that's coped with them typically having a drug or alcohol problem, and those drugs and alcohol are what's fueling their rage and their aggression, not the PTSD by itself. The fourth myth about PTSD is that people with PTSD are weak. People with PTSD have to fight a battle inside their head every single day. If that is weakness, then you clearly have no idea what strength is. Not only that, but some people just have the genetic disposition to more easily get PTSD than others. It's also been found that people who don't have a good support system and people they can talk to about their trauma are more likely to develop longer lasting and more severe PTSD than those who have people they can turn to and talk with. And so people who have PTSD are not weak. They've just been through incredible trauma and are trying to process and cope with that in their lives. And the fifth and final myth that we're going to talk about today is that PTSD is not treatable. And the reason I say this is a myth is because people get treatable and curable mixed up. there are treatments, but there's not a cure. There are things that people can go through these treatments and make incredible progress and have little to no symptoms in their lives, but there's no cure for PTSD. And so that's where wording really comes into play. Some of the more common treatments are medication and therapy. There's tons of different types of therapy, tons of different types of medication. And the struggle is every person who has PTSD has to find out what works for them and their genetic makeup, especially when it comes to medications. You might go through 10 or 15 different medications before you find one that works for you. And that is so incredibly frustrating. That, on top of going through therapy, is very, very difficult. Another treatment that several people with PTSD find incredibly helpful is that of a service dog. Now, it took me years to even get treatment, and after I got treatment, it took me quite a while longer to come to the conclusion that a service dog would be beneficial to me. And it's a lot of work, it's a lot of dedication, but for me personally, the positives outweigh the negatives. And so a service dog is not for everybody. In fact, it's not for most people because of the amount of dedication and work it actually takes to have a service dog. But service dogs are an option for some, and those who have service dogs that have PTSD have leaps and bounds of improvement. And so those are 5 common myths about PTSD and why they're not true. I hope that you guys learned a little something from this video. I hope that it's brought a little bit of awareness to you. Anyways, that's all I've got for today. I love you guys. I'll see you next time.